Pay attention to the empty lot on the corner of Dellwood Avenue. It is 3:04 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. The neighborhood is asleep. Nothing on this block has any reason to be awake at this hour. But something is moving. A figure. Walking slowly from the south end of the lot. Head down, no flashlight. Moving like someone who has made this exact walk before. They stop at the northeast corner of the foundation. They stand there, perfectly still. Every single night for 8 months. 248 consecutive nights. Every Wednesday a second figure arrives. Unmarked van, high visibility vest, carrying equipment into the same pit, leaving before sunrise, looking exactly like he belongs there. He does not belong there. The house was demolished 8 months ago. The woman who lived here has been missing for 14 months. The demolition company's camera was forgotten on that utility pole. It was not done recording. Claire Marsh was 36 years old. As the kind of garden that made people as the kind of garden that made people slow down when they walked past. Dahlias in August. Sweet peas climbing a cedar trellis. She knew every plant by its Latin name. She had lived in the house on Dellwood Avenue for 9 years. She had been married for 6 of them. Her husband, Daniel Marsh, I was 41 years old, a project manager for a regional construction firm. By all visible accounts, the marriage was unremarkable in the way that stable marriages often are. 2 people who had built a life together, who attended neighborhood barbecues together, who argued occasionally about whose turn it was to call the plumber. Their neighbor, Patricia Elwood, 58 years old, a retired school librarian who lived directly across the street, described them as a normal couple. Friendly. Private. Nothing that ever made her look twice. Claire Marsh was reported missing on August 14th. Daniel Marsh made the call to police at 7:30 p.m. He said he had come home from a 3-day work trip to find the house empty. Claire's car was in the driveway. Her phone was on the kitchen counter. Her wallet, her keys, her passport, all present. Only Claire was gone. Detective Iris Vang caught the case. She was 44 years old, 12 years in missing persons before transferring to homicide. A background that gave her a particular kind of patience with cases that refused to resolve quickly. She interviewed Daniel Marsh for 2 hours on the evening of the report. He was composed. He answered every question directly. He offered to provide his phone records, his hotel receipts, his meeting schedules from the work trip without being asked. Vang noted his cooperation in her report. She also noted that he did not cry. Not once during the 2-hour interview. She wrote 3 words in the margin of her notepad. Watch this one. The search of the house and surrounding area produced nothing. No signs of struggle inside, no blood, no disrupted furniture, no indication of forced entry. The garden along the south wall had been recently watered, within 24 hours of Claire's disappearance according to the soil moisture. Whoever had left that house had either left willingly or been taken without resistance. Canvassing the neighborhood yielded 2 pieces of information. A teenager 2 blocks east reported seeing a green Subaru, possibly Claire's, he wasn't certain, parked on the street the morning of August 13th, the day before Daniel returned. And Patricia Elwood, the retired librarian across the street, mentioned something that she initially thought was irrelevant. She said that in the week before Claire disappeared, she had noticed Daniel's truck in the driveway on the evening of August 11th, the second night of his supposed work trip. She had assumed she was mistaken. She had not mentioned it to anyone. She mentioned it to Vang almost as an afterthought, standing in her doorway with a cup of tea going cold in her hand. Vang pulled the hotel records. Daniel Marsh had checked into a Marriott in Columbus on August 10th. He had checked out August 13th. His key card showed entry to his room on the evenings of the 10th and 13th. On the evening of the 11th, the night Patricia Elwood saw his truck, there was no keycard activity at all. His phone records placed him in Columbus, but phone records track the phone, not the person. The investigation ran for 4 months. There was no body, there was no crime scene, there was no evidence sufficient to charge anyone. On December 22nd, with no new leads, the case was reclassified as an inactive missing persons investigation. Daniel Marsh had by this point given 11 separate statements. He had passed a polygraph. His attorney had been present for the last 6 interviews. He had maintained throughout that he did not know where his wife was, that he loved her, that he was devastated. He did not look devastated, but looking devastated is not evidence. In January, 5 months after Claire's disappearance, Daniel Marsh sold the house on Dellwood Avenue. The buyer was a development company called Meridian Group, which had been quietly acquiring residential properties in the neighborhood as part of a planned luxury apartment project. The sale price was $340,000. The transaction was processed within 3 weeks. Patricia Elwood watched the for sale sign go up from her front window. She called Detective Vang the same day. Vang noted it. There was nothing illegal about selling a house. Meridian Group contracted a demolition crew in February. The house came down over 4 days. The crew was professional and efficient. They cleared the structure down to the foundation slab, hauled the debris, and left the lot open. Standard procedure while the development permits were finalized. Before leaving the site, the crew foreman, a man named Pete Garza, mounted a security camera on the utility pole at the corner of the lot. Standard protocol for an open construction site. The camera ran on the pole's electrical supply and transmitted footage to a cloud server managed by the Demolition company's parent corporation. It was intended to deter copper theft during the construction gap. Pete Garza filed the camera installation in his site report. The parent corporation's cloud server logged the activation. Then the project moved to the next job. The permits for the Dellwood lot stalled in a city planning backlog, and over the following months the camera on the utility pole continued recording, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, while nobody watched. The first call came in on September 4th at 3:21 a.m. A resident on Dellwood Avenue reported hearing music from the empty lot. The dispatcher logged it as a noise complaint. An officer drove past, saw nothing, and noted the complaint as resolved. The second call came on September 11th. Same address. Music from the empty lot. Same hour. This time, the officer parked and walked the perimeter. The lot was empty and dark. The music had stopped. He noted possible audio bleed from neighboring property. By October, the calls had become weekly. Always between 3 and 3:30 a.m. Always the same lot. On October 19th, a resident named Gordon Abbey, 44 years old, an insomniac who had been aware of the music for weeks, walked to the edge of the lot at 3:06 a.m. and stood there listening. He later described it to police as a slow, foundation level, he thought. Not from a foundation level, he thought, not from a passing vehicle or a neighboring window. Gordon Abbey went back inside and called his neighbor, Sandra Osei, 39 years old, who had lived on Dellwood Avenue for 7 years and had known Claire Marsh well enough to wave to her every morning. Sandra came to her front window and listened. When Abbey described the song, Sandra went very still. She said she knew that song. She said she had heard it coming from Claire's garden every summer morning for years. She said Claire played it on a small Bluetooth speaker while she watered her dahlias. Sandra did not know the name of the song, but she knew every note of it. She called Detective Vang at 3:14 a.m. Vang was asleep. She called again at 7 a.m. and left a detailed message. By 9 a.m., Vang was standing on Dellwood Avenue looking at the empty foundation of Claire Marsh's former home. It was Vang who thought to ask about site security. She contacted Meridian Group that afternoon, requesting any surveillance equipment installed on the property. A project coordinator told her there was a camera on the utility pole. He assumed it had been deactivated months ago. Vang asked him to check. He checked. The camera was active. The footage was stored on the cloud server. All of it. 8 months of continuous recording. Forensic tech analyst Brendan Cole, the same analyst who had processed CCTV footage in 3 of Vang's prior cases, spent 36 hours reviewing the archive. He built a log of every motion event the camera had detected across 8 months, recognized within the first hour that he was looking at 2 different people doing 2 very different things on the same lot. Pattern 1. Beginning February 28th, 4 days after the demolition crew cleared the site, a figure began appearing on the lot every night between 2:55 and 3:30 a.m. The figure entered from the south side of the lot, walked directly to the northeast corner of the foundation, and stood there, still, for exactly 22 minutes each night. On the 3rd night, the figure produced a small portable speaker. From that night forward, the music played while the figure stood in the northeast corner. Cole could not identify the song from the footage, but the pattern was unmistakable. Same corner, same duration, same hour, every single night. 248 consecutive nights by the time Vang pulled the footage, and the figure wore a hood in cold weather. In summer footage, the face was partially visible. Cole enhanced the clearest frames. Male, approximately 40 years old. Familiar jaw, familiar build, Daniel Marsh, pattern 2. Beginning. April 14th, a second figure began appearing on the lot. Not nightly, weekly, always on a Wednesday between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. This figure arrived in an unmarked white van, parking 2 blocks east and walking to the lot in a high-visibility vest and work boots. The vest and boots were deliberate, Cole noted in his report. The figure moved with the casual authority of someone who expected to belong anywhere they stood. No hesitation at the lot perimeter. No checking of surroundings. The confidence of someone wearing a costume that works. The figure carried equipment from the van to the lot in multiple trips. A generator, heavy-duty bags. On 2 occasions, a hand truck loaded with what appeared to be large plastic containers. The figure worked in the foundation pit for 1 to 2 hours each Wednesday, always alone. Always leaving before 1 a.m. In footage from May 3rd, the figure's face became briefly visible when a vehicle's headlights swept across the lot from the adjacent street. Cole ran the image through facial recognition. The system returned a match. The name was Victor Crane. Age 44. 2 prior arrests, one for aggravated assault in 2018, charges dropped, one for criminal trespass in 2020, and pleaded to a misdemeanor. His listed occupation on the most recent arrest record was construction laborer. His last known employer was a demolition subcontractor. Not Pete Garza's crew, a different company, one that had worked 3 properties in the surrounding neighborhood in the past 2 years. Cole flagged both patterns to Vang in a single report. He titled the document simply, 2 subjects, 1 site. Vang obtained a warrant for the Dellwood Avenue lot on October 23rd. Garza and asked him to keep the warrant information between himself and the city attorney's office. The excavation began at 6 a.m. on October 24th. The cadaver dogs signaled within 11 minutes of entering the foundation pit. They signaled in 3 separate locations, all in the northeast quadrant, all within a 15-foot radius of the corner where Daniel Marsh stood every night. The forensic team worked for 2 days. What they recovered from the foundation pit of the former home of Claire Marsh, beneath 3 feet of compacted soil and gravel fill, was the following: the remains of Claire Marsh, wrapped in plastic sheeting, buried at a depth consistent with the timeline of the house's demolition, meaning she had been placed in the ground before the demolition crew arrived, before Daniel Marsh sold the house, before any of it. The remains of a man later identified as Raymond Tully, age 52, a freelance electrician who had been reported missing from the Northgate district in May, 6 weeks after Victor Crane's first appearance on the foundation camera. The remains of a woman later identified as Sonia Birch, age 31, a graduate student at the City University who had been reported missing in July. Her roommate had filed the report. Came through the name was Marcus Delray. Age 27, a delivery driver who had last been seen in August. His girlfriend had been calling the missing persons line every week. She had been told the investigation was ongoing. Raymond Tully, Sonia Birch, and Marcus Delray had no connection to Claire Marsh. They had no connection to Daniel Marsh. They had one connection to each other. All 3 had been present in the same neighborhood in the months following the demolition. All 3 had disappeared within walking distance of Dellwood Avenue. All 3 had been placed in the foundation pit by Victor Crane on Wednesday nights between April and August, while Daniel Marsh stood in the northeast corner of the same pit every night, playing his dead wife's favorite song, 40 feet from where Victor Crane was burying strangers. Neither man knew the other was there. The pit had been used simultaneously as a grave and a vigil by 2 people with no knowledge of each other's presence. The camera had recorded both. Daniel Marsh was arrested at his rental apartment on November 1st. He did not resist. He had clearly known the arrest was coming. He was dressed, seated at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee, as if he had been waiting. He looked at Vang when she entered and said nothing for a long moment. Then he said, "She didn't suffer." It was the first thing he said, not a denial, not a question. A statement of fact from someone who needed it on record. In subsequent interviews, Marsh described killing Claire on the evening of August 11th, the night Patricia Elwood saw his truck, the night his hotel keycard showed no activity. He had driven home from Columbus, argued with Claire about something he refused to specify in detail, and killed her in the kitchen of the house they had shared for 9 years. He had buried her himself beneath the foundation, using equipment he had access to through his construction firm. He had planned the sale of the house and the demolition carefully. He had understood that once the foundation was poured over and construction began, she would never be found. What he had not planned was standing at the edge of that foundation every night for 8 months, unable to leave. He said he had started visiting the lot 3 days after the demolition. He said he told himself he would only go once. He had not missed a single night since. He had purchased the portable speaker 2 weeks in because the silence felt wrong. He played her song because it was the only thing he knew how to give her. Victor Crane was arrested at a truck stop on Route 9 on November 3rd. He had been identified through the facial recognition match and his employment records. Investigators established that Crane had selected his victims through a pattern of observation in the neighborhood. All 3 had been seen near the demolition site during his weekly visits. Crane had no motive beyond predation. He had used the open foundation pit as a disposal site because he had professional knowledge of construction timelines. He had calculated that the pit would be filled when construction resumed, eliminating all evidence permanently. He had calculated correctly. The city planning backlog had saved the evidence. A bureaucratic delay had done what investigative work had not. Daniel Marsh and Victor Crane were tried separately. The foundation camera footage was central to both prosecutions. In Marsh's trial, The 248 consecutive nights of footage were played for the jury in a condensed time-lapse. 8 months of a man standing in the same corner at the same hour. The jury watched in silence. When it ended, the courtroom remained quiet for several seconds longer than it should have. Marsh pleaded guilty to second-degree murder on the 4th day of trial. His attorney had advised against it. Marsh overruled him. He said in his statement to the court that he did not want Claire's name spoken inside a courtroom for weeks. He said that was the only thing he could still do for her. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life. Victor Crane pleaded not guilty on all 4 counts. His defense argued insufficient forensic evidence connecting him directly to the 3 deaths. The camera footage, his attorney contended, showed presence at the site, not murder. The prosecution countered with DNA, evidence recovered from the burial materials, digital forensic analysis of Crane's phone, placing him in proximity to each victim in the days before their disappearances, and testimony from a former associate who described Crane discussing the demolition site as a location with, in Crane's words, permanent storage potential. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. Victor Crane was convicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Detective Iris Vang still works homicide. The Marsh case is the one she returns to most often when she speaks at training seminars. Not because of its complexity. In some ways, it resolved more cleanly than most. She returns to it because of Patricia Elwood, a retired librarian with a cup of tea going cold in her hand, mentioning almost as an afterthought that she had seen a truck on a night when a truck should not have been there. Vang tells every new detective the same thing. The afterthoughts are where the cases live. Patricia Elwood has not moved from the house across the street from the empty lot. She tends a small garden now along her south wall. She planted dahlias in August. She did not do it consciously, she says. She was at the nursery, and she saw them, and she put them in her cart. She waters them every morning. She does not play music while she does it. The silence feels appropriate to her. She thinks it will for a long time. Gordon Abbey, the insomniac who walked to the lot at 3 a.m. and listened, has given one interview since the case concluded. He was asked what it felt like to stand in the dark listening to music from a demolished house. He said it felt like something that was trying to be heard. He said he was glad he stopped to listen. Sandra Osei identified the song for investigators from a recording Cole extracted from the camera's audio feed. It was a song Claire had loved since college. Sandra had heard it hundreds of times through the open windows of the garden on summer mornings. After the trial, she found the song online and listened to it in her car with the doors locked. She listened to it 4 times. She has not listened to it since. She says she does not need to. She says she already knows every note. Raymond Tully's family, Sonia Birch's family, and Marcus Delray's girlfriend attended the sentencing hearing for Victor Crane together. They had met during the trial and had continued meeting afterward. Delray's girlfriend, whose name is Amara, said in a statement outside the courthouse that she had called the missing persons line every single week for 3 months and had been told the investigation was ongoing. She said 3 people were buried in a foundation pit 5 blocks from where they lived. She said, ongoing is not a word that means what we need it to mean. She said the system needs different words, better ones that move. The Meridian Group's luxury apartment development on Dellwood Avenue was canceled following the case. The lot remains empty. The city has not sold it. There is a proposal before the Planning Council to designate it as a memorial green space. The proposal has support from the Neighborhood Association and from the families of the 3 victims buried there. It has been under review for 7 months. These things take time. The utility pole at the corner of the lot still stands. The demolition company's camera was removed by investigators in October and entered into evidence. The mount bracket remains on the pole. A small, rusted ring where the camera used to sit. It faces the northeast corner of the foundation, the corner where Daniel Marsh stood for 248 consecutive nights. The corner where Claire Marsh was buried. The corner that a forgotten camera watched without judgment, without fatigue, without the capacity to look away. Most evidence gets collected. Most cameras get retrieved. Most footage gets reviewed before 8 months pass, and two separate crimes share the same square footage without ever knowing each other. Most, not all. The lot is quiet now at 3 a.m. The music has stopped. The Wednesday night visits have stopped. The foundation holds nothing anymore except soil and silence, and the faint impression of what was done there by two men who never knew the other existed. One who came to bury what he could not face. One who came because he could not stay away from what he had already buried. The dahlias on Patricia Elwood's south wall came up in August. They came up well. She has left the ones facing the lot to grow as tall as they like.